"You're not supposed to be here." Officer Blake Thornton's voice cut through the humid night air, sharp and unwavering, as the neon sign of the roadside motel flickered above them. Jordan Ellis's hands gripped the steering wheel with a quiet firmness, eyes fixed on the dashboard, watching the reflection of red and blue lights ripple across the wet asphalt. Rain-slicked streets stretched behind the chain-link fence, tiny puddles shimmering under the glow of the motel's overhead bulbs. Jordan had just pulled into the cracked parking lot, his delivery van humming softly, a thin ribbon of exhaust blending with the misty air. The tires crunched over gravel as he stopped, the van's headlights cutting through the fog, revealing the peeling paint of the motel doors and the hum of the air conditioning units perched unevenly on the window ledges. Officer Thornton's shadow loomed tall, coat dripping with rainwater, boots scuffing the asphalt, hand resting near the radio clipped to his belt. The motel itself smelled faintly of mildew and coffee, the faint glow from inside the lobby illuminating chipped furniture and a worn carpet that had seen better days. Jordan exhaled slowly, the mist from his breath mingling with the rain, tracing a thin line across the windshield. "I'm just finishing a drop," Jordan replied calmly, voice steady, careful not to escalate, his eyes catching the officer's gaze in a momentary pause that felt heavier than the storm above. A motorcycle roared by on the nearby highway, its engine deep and resonant, vibrating through the soles of his worn boots. The motel's neon sign buzzed intermittently, casting streaks of pink and green over Jordan's dark hoodie, wet from the rain, sleeves clinging to his arms. Each raindrop slid slowly down the windshield, creating tiny rivers that distorted the officer's face, making him appear almost unreal, like a figure stepping out of a painting. Jordan's fingers drummed lightly on the steering wheel, subtle and rhythmic, the only sound beyond the muted hum of his van and the distant traffic. Officer Thornton's eyes narrowed, scanning Jordan from head to toe, measuring, assessing, the weight of authority pressing down. Unyielding, absolute. Jordan shifted slightly in his seat, adjusting the rearview mirror, catching the flicker of his reflection, focused, alert, a quiet defiance hiding beneath calm, ordinary features. Lightning forked in the distance, illuminating the motel's facade in a stark white flash, the momentary brilliance highlighting the peeling paint and the faint graffiti on the concrete pillars. Thunder followed almost immediately, a low, resonant growl that seemed to echo the tension suspended between them. The officer's hand moved slightly, almost imperceptibly, toward the radio, fingers brushing the fabric of his coat, and Jordan's pulse quickened, not from fear, but from anticipation, the raw, unspoken energy of a confrontation on the edge of unfolding. Each breath he took was deliberate, slow, measured, the cool damp air filling his lungs, grounding him, reminding him of the clarity in the storm's chaos. The motel's neon sign buzzed again, erratic, a staccato pulse in rhythm with the pounding of rain on the roof, and Jordan's eyes shifted to the shadowed outlines of other vehicles parked haphazardly, the motel's tenants moving silently behind curtains, unaware of the precise tension that had taken form in their midst. A flicker of motion from the corner of the lot, a cat darting between puddles, its wet fur glistening under the pale light, seemed to mark time, a subtle counterpoint to the building pressure between man and officer. Jordan's gaze returned to Officer Thornton, noting the slight tightness around his jaw, the twitch of a finger at his belt, the unspoken demand hanging in the air. The rain slowed to a drizzle, leaving tiny beaded trails across the van's hood, reflecting the flickering lights, and Jordan allowed himself a slow, almost imperceptible nod, an acknowledgement of the challenge without conceding control. The street lamp overhead flickered and hummed, its weak light casting elongated shadows that stretched across the gravel, tangling with the officer's looming figure. Jordan's mind raced not with panic, but with a deliberate consideration of every detail. The van's license plate, the motel door numbers, the placement of the puddles, the angle of the officer's stance, all fragments of a calm readiness, each element storing potential leverage. Thunder rumbled again, low, and Jordan's hands tightened briefly on the wheel, the sound blending with the rain's rhythm, creating a percussion of tension that filled the empty space of the lot. The neon sign above continued to flicker, buzzing in tandem with the officer's quiet assessment, the motel's air smelling faintly of wet concrete, a lingering hint of coffee and cleaners, grounding the moment in sensory reality. Jordan adjusted the seat slightly, feeling the leather creak under his weight, the wet hoodie clinging, a tangible reminder of the night's chill and the persistent drizzle. The distant highway thrummed faintly, punctuating the silence between words, and the officer's eyes caught the movement of a crow landing on the motel's roof, black wings cutting through the dim light, almost like an omen suspended in the air. Jordan's focus narrowed, mind and body aligned, sensing the rhythm of the encounter, the subtle shifts in posture, the unspoken dialogue of anticipation. Every drop of rain hitting the van's roof seemed to mark the passage of tension, a counterpoint to the flicker of neon and the distant rumble of thunder. And then, in a quiet but firm voice, almost drowned by the rain's whisper, Jordan said, "I have all the receipts right here, officer," holding up a small, waterproof envelope with calm certainty, the movement deliberate, precise, a challenge hidden in courtesy, the kind of statement that could shift the balance without a single raised hand, the words slicing through the storm and the authority, an invisible pivot that carried the weight of truth and composure, standing firm as the neon flickered one last time before the storm rumbled into a distant growl, the night holding its breath, waiting, caught between the certainty of authority and the quiet strength of a man who knew his own integrity. Jordan Ellis exhaled slowly, the damp air inside the delivery van wrapping around him like a cool, heavy blanket, the lingering hum of the engine filling the quiet space as he adjusted the seat and rubbed the fog from the windshield. The envelope he held still felt firm against his chest, its contents precise and orderly, a tangible reassurance in the midst of the tense night. The motel lot stretched empty behind him, rows of flickering lights reflecting in shallow puddles that traced the cracks in the asphalt, forming a patchwork of luminous patterns beneath the wet sky. Jordan's mind wandered briefly to the deliveries he had completed earlier that day, the crisp weight of invoices and packages in his hands, the predictable rhythm of routine that now seemed a world away from the electric suspense of this moment. His eyes drifted to the faded paint of the motel doors, the rusted hinges squeaking softly whenever the wind nudged them, each sound marking the passage of time in a place that felt suspended between the ordinary and the extraordinary. Inside the van, the faint scent of damp fabric mingled with the faint odor of paper and ink, grounding him, reminding him of the simple details that connected his life to reality, even as the external tension hummed like an unspoken drumbeat. Jordan's gaze moved to the rearview mirror, catching the faint silhouette of Officer Thornton pacing slightly, the officer's posture rigid, yet shifting subtly with each measured step, a visual metronome of authority. Lightning flashed briefly, revealing the motel's chipped exterior in stark relief, highlighting peeling paint and warped wood, momentarily illuminating the patterns of wear and age that told stories of countless nights and guests who had come and gone, each leaving an invisible mark behind. Jordan's fingers tapped lightly against the steering wheel, almost imperceptible, matching a rhythm he felt within himself, a controlled counterpoint to the silent storm of expectation surrounding him. Each breath he drew was deliberate, pulling in the cool, damp air, filling his lungs, then exhaling slowly, a measured rhythm that reminded him of the control he could maintain even when everything around him seemed in flux. The faint buzz of the neon sign overhead, flickering sporadically, cast dancing shadows across the dashboard, glinting off the metallic surfaces and reflecting in Jordan's steady eyes. Beyond the van, the quiet hum of distant traffic provided a subtle undercurrent to the tension, punctuated by occasional raindrops splashing into puddles, tiny disturbances that sent ripples across the surface like echoes of the night's unsettled energy. Jordan's mind traced the sequence of events that had brought him here, each detail connecting seamlessly. The deliveries, the careful checks of addresses, the cautious navigation of side streets, the rhythm of his workday that had trained him to notice minute inconsistencies, to anticipate challenges before they appeared. In the side mirror, a single crow perched atop the motel roof, its feathers slick with rain, head tilted in observation, a silent witness to the unfolding scene, marking time with a presence both ordinary and strangely symbolic. Jordan shifted slightly in his seat, feeling the damp fabric of his hoodie cling to his back, the leather of the steering wheel cool under his fingers, and in that simple, tactile awareness, he found a center of calm. The neon lights continued their staccato pulse, reflecting off the wet asphalt in fractured lines, and Jordan followed the patterns with a steady gaze, letting the visual rhythm settle his thoughts, reinforcing the clarity he carried despite the storm outside. In the lobby, faint sounds of movement and muffled voices hinted at other people in the motel, yet none interfered with the delicate balance of the current moment, the unspoken negotiation of presence and authority unfolding in the empty lot. Jordan's eyes returned to the envelope, his fingers brushing the edge, feeling the precise organization within, a quiet affirmation of preparation and readiness, each element accounted for, each detail known. The distant flash of another vehicle's headlights swept across the lot, briefly catching the glint of raindrops and casting elongated shadows that seemed to stretch toward the van, a visual echo of the tension suspended between him and the officer. Jordan exhaled again, a controlled release, and adjusted the rearview mirror one final time, catching the briefest reflection of his own expression, calm, alert, unwavering, before focusing once more on the external scene, the wet asphalt. The flickering neon, the darkened motel doors, and the figure of Officer Thornton moving methodically with the quiet authority of experience. Each step measured, each glance calculated, every element contributing to a charged tableau that held the night in suspended anticipation. Officer Blake Thornton stepped closer, his polished boots clicking softly against the rain-soaked asphalt, the faint scent of wet concrete and lingering motel coffee surrounding him. Jordan Ellis remained seated, eyes steady, tracing the lines of the envelope in his hands, noting the slight creases from repeated handling, each fold a mark of preparation, of care, of attention to detail that had defined his entire evening. The van's engine hummed low, a constant undercurrent beneath the intermittent patter of raindrops tapping against the metal roof, creating a rhythm that synchronized subtly with the measured pace of Thornton's movements. The motel's neon sign buzzed sporadically, casting shifting shades of pink and green across the hood of the van, reflecting in Jordan's focused eyes as they followed the officer's movements, capturing each subtle twitch of his jaw, each momentary narrowing of his gaze, a silent conversation of anticipation and assessment. Inside the van, the faint smell of damp fabric and ink from the papers intermingled with the ozone from the storm, grounding Jordan, anchoring his mind to the present, while outside, the mist clung to every surface, diffusing the harsh light into a soft, almost ethereal glow that painted both men in a surreal tableau. Thornton paused, glancing toward the motel office where a single lamp burned behind dusty glass, the figure of a clerk momentarily visible as she adjusted the curtain, unaware of the tension unfolding outside. Jordan's fingers brushed against the envelope again, feeling the texture of the waterproof paper, the way the corners resisted folding, a tangible reminder of preparation and composure. The officer's hand hovered near his belt, not in aggression but in habitual authority, the subtle shift of a weight distribution that spoke to experience, to training, to a life lived asserting control over situations like this. While Jordan's breathing remained calm, deliberate, each inhalation slow, measured, as if syncing with the storm's rhythm, feeling the wet leather of his steering wheel under his palms, the dampness of his hoodie clinging slightly to his arms, all sensations sharpened by focus and presence. The motel lot lay quiet around them, puddles reflecting fractured lights, the distant sound of tires on wet pavement punctuating the silence between breaths. Jordan's gaze drifted briefly to the small signage marking the parking spaces, noting the flaking paint and the uneven numbers, details others might overlook. Yet in this moment, they offered a strange sense of familiarity, a grounding anchor amidst the tension. A crow alighted atop the motel roof, feathers wet, head tilting as if observing the scene below, a silent sentinel against the backdrop of storm clouds illuminated intermittently by distant flashes of lightning, their brief brilliance revealing the motel's worn exterior in stark contrast to the otherwise darkened surroundings. The wind shifted slightly, carrying the faint aroma of damp grass from the roadside embankment, rustling the edges of the envelope in Jordan's hands, a tactile whisper that reminded him of the tangible world beyond the abstract pressure of the encounter. Thornton shifted his weight, boot heels scraping softly against the gravel, the motion deliberate, methodical, a measured demonstration of authority, while Jordan's eyes followed every movement, noting the slight adjustments of posture, the almost imperceptible sway of the coat, the glint of light catching on the metallic badge clipped to Thornton's belt. The rain began to lessen, softening into a fine mist that coated the van's windshield, creating a reflective surface through which Jordan could see both the officer and the dimly lit lot beyond, his mind parsing every visual cue, every shadow and highlight, cataloging the details, the rhythm, the subtle signs of hesitation or certainty. Jordan shifted slightly in his seat, adjusting the angle of the rearview mirror, catching the faint reflection of his own determined expression, the tight set of his jaw, the calmness in his eyes that contrasted with the rigid poise of Thornton outside. The neon sign buzzed once more, briefly illuminating a row of motel windows, casting long, fractured shadows across the gravel and puddles, light and dark interweaving in an almost cinematic pattern that mirrored the quiet tension between the two men. Each breath Jordan took, each subtle movement of his hands along the envelope, each tilt of his head, aligned with the rhythm of the night, a silent choreography of anticipation, awareness, and steadfast composure, preparing the ground for the shift in balance that he knew was coming, a quiet assertion of integrity and focus that would carry him through the storm and beyond the oppressive weight of authority imposed upon him. Jordan Ellis carefully unzipped the waterproof envelope, revealing stacks of meticulously organized documents, each page crisp and precise, the text printed in uniform type, headers aligned perfectly, numbers and calculations in neat columns. He removed a single sheet, the edge slightly damp from condensation on the van's windshield, and held it up to the dim glow of the neon sign, letting the flickering light dance across the fine lines of text, highlighting the careful annotations he had made during the day. Each note, each circle and underline, was deliberate, a quiet testament to preparation and awareness, evidence that he had not simply relied on memory, but had brought tangible proof of accuracy, a silent assertion of his attention to detail. Officer Blake Thornton shifted slightly, the reflection of neon and wet asphalt catching in his eyes as he leaned just enough to peer at the envelope. Curiosity mingled with authority, a subtle acknowledgement that the contents might matter more than appearances suggested. Jordan flipped another sheet slowly, deliberately, ensuring that every page revealed itself clearly, the gentle rustle of paper a soft counterpoint to the rain falling on the van's roof, tapping in irregular yet rhythmic patterns, a natural percussion that underscored the stillness between the two men. The motel lot seemed to stretch wider in the dim light, the wet asphalt reflecting the patches of neon and distant streetlights, creating a labyrinth of light and shadow that framed the interaction like a silent stage, each puddle catching a fragment of the fluorescent glow, each crack in the asphalt tracing an irregular pattern that seemed almost intentional in its unpredictability. Jordan's fingers brushed lightly over the top of the stack, noting the slight resistance of the paper, the weight of the envelope, the subtle temperature change from the damp night air, grounding him in tactile reality while his mind parsed through the logical sequence of points he intended to convey. Officer Thornton's stance remained firm, boots planted slightly apart, one hand resting near the radio, not in gesture but as habitual positioning, a reminder of training and procedural confidence, yet his eyes tracked every movement, every adjustment Jordan made with a measured interest, recognizing the quiet competence in a situation that might have seemed ordinary to any casual observer. Jordan shifted his seat slightly, leaning forward just enough to align the top edge of the paper with the flickering light, ensuring clarity, precision, and focus, a deliberate display of methodical calm that contrasted sharply with the storm of expectation in the lot around them. The air inside the van carried a faint scent of damp fabric and the paper itself, the subtle aroma mingling with the outdoor mist, a sensory backdrop that emphasized the tangible reality of the situation over any imagined threat, anchoring Jordan in control of his own composure. Beyond the van, The motel office's light flickered faintly as the clerk moved behind the counter, adjusting papers and noticing only briefly the glow from the parking lot, entirely unaware of the delicate, unspoken negotiation occurring outside. Jordan's gaze moved to the edges of the envelope again, fingertips tracing each corner, each crease, a tactile rehearsal of argument and evidence, a physical rehearsal that prepared him for the exchange without a single word spoken. A soft gust of wind passed over the lot, stirring the puddles, sending small ripples that fractured the reflected lights, a subtle visual metaphor for the potential ripple of consequence from the careful presentation he was assembling. Jordan exhaled slowly, letting the breath draw in the cool mist and release it methodically, a deliberate rhythm that mirrored the visual patterns of flickering neon across the hood of the van, grounding thought and movement in precise synchronicity. The distant hum of traffic provided a low, constant counterpoint to the rhythmic patter of rain, a quiet underscore to the measured actions of both men as the night seemed to stretch, holding time in suspended anticipation, each movement and breath deliberate, each glance a silent calculation of weight, authority, and presence. Jordan lifted another page, adjusting the angle so that every annotation and circled detail was visible under the dim neon glow, each mark a quiet statement of preparation, a testament to foresight and integrity, demonstrating, without words, the careful orchestration of facts and clarity. Officer Thornton's eyes followed, noting the organization, the attention to detail, a subtle shift in his posture acknowledging the unexpected thoroughness of the man he had assessed initially as simply another presence to manage. The rain continued its soft patter, the occasional streak across the windshield catching the light and momentarily illuminating the focused expressions of both men, framing Jordan's meticulous attention as both a visual and symbolic assertion of competence, authority of truth, and calm control amidst the otherwise ordinary environment of the motel lot at the edge of the quiet highway. Officer Blake Thornton's expression shifted slightly, a subtle tightening around the eyes that betrayed a flicker of disbelief as he scanned the organized pages Jordan Ellis held before him. The motel lot remained dimly illuminated by the intermittent neon light, the gentle patter of rain softening to a mist that clung to the asphalt and hood of the van. Jordan's fingers rested lightly on the envelope, poised to lift another sheet, every movement deliberate, steady, conveying composure without a word. The officer's hand hovered near his belt, not in gesture but as an unconscious measure of presence, a silent assertion of authority, while Jordan's calm attention created a quiet counterbalance. Beyond them, the motel facade seemed to breathe under the flickering neon, shadows stretching across the gravel and puddles, each reflection subtly distorting the scene, the distorted light echoing the tension in the lot. Jordan's gaze was unwavering, noting the soft reflections of the office lamp across the wet asphalt, the way the mist curled around the edges of the parking lines, the rhythm of raindrops tracing paths along the hood and windshield. Each small detail, the uneven paint, the slight tilt of the mailbox, the glint of water along cracks in the asphalt, added to his sense of presence, grounding him even as the environment seemed to hold its breath. Officer Thornton stepped slightly closer, the click of his boots against gravel punctuating the quiet, the muffled hum of a distant highway providing a subtle undercurrent to the charged atmosphere. Jordan shifted his weight, aligning the top sheet in the neon light, allowing every annotation, circle, and note to be clearly visible, each mark a precise testament to diligence, foresight, and careful attention, a quiet demonstration of preparation that contrasted with the officer's rigid, habitual posture. The mist swirled around the edges of the van, drifting over the wet asphalt, carrying the faint scent of damp concrete and cold night air, a sensory overlay that made the scene feel almost suspended in time. The envelope's paper made a soft rustle as Jordan adjusted the sheet, aligning it with the reflective light, a subtle sound that seemed amplified in the stillness, the soft echo blending with the patter of water from the eaves above. Thornton's eyes followed every movement, his brows knitting briefly as he absorbed the meticulous organization, the clarity in the presentation, a quiet acknowledgement forming without a word, his presence a measured counterpoint to Jordan's calm focus. The neon sign overhead flickered again, casting transient stripes of pink and green over the gravel, puddles shimmering with each small ripple, the visual rhythm almost hypnotic, reinforcing the steady cadence of Jordan's breathing and deliberate gestures. Jordan's hands traced the edge of the envelope. Once more, fingertips noting the precise folds, the slight texture of the waterproof paper, the tactile reassurance of preparation. Thunder rumbled faintly in the distance, a low undertone that seemed to echo the tension between the two men, each pulse of sound reinforcing the quiet anticipation of what was to come. The motel's lot seemed to expand in the dim, refracted light, each puddle a miniature mirror reflecting fragments of neon, the van, and the officer, creating a layered, almost cinematic tableau that captured the subtle dynamics at play. Jordan exhaled slowly, deliberate, allowing the breath to ground him, to maintain focus, while his eyes remained fixed on the top sheet, scanning every annotation, every number, every note for clarity and impact. Officer Thornton shifted his stance, a slight adjustment of weight, a pause in the step, a visual acknowledgement of the unexpected thoroughness presented before him. The rain misted across the windshield, each droplet refracting the neon into fragmented colors, momentarily highlighting the meticulous notes Jordan held, a visual emphasis on preparation and clarity amidst the subtle tension. Jordan's attention never wavered, each adjustment, each deliberate movement, conveying calm, integrity, and readiness, holding space for truth and precision in the stillness of the motel lot under the rainy night. The quiet scene layered with light, reflection, and anticipation, every element composing a tableau of measured presence and the quiet assertion of awareness in the midst of authority. Jordan Ellis leaned back slightly in the driver's seat, letting the faint mist of rain settle on the windshield, the droplets refracting the neon glow from the motel sign into tiny prisms of color that danced across the dashboard. The van's interior smelled faintly of damp fabric and ink, a subtle reminder of the careful preparation that had brought him to this moment, each annotated page, each precise calculation reflecting hours of attention to detail. Outside, the air hung heavy with humidity, the faint hum of distant traffic blending with the occasional drip from the eaves of the motel roof, creating a low, rhythmic undertone too. The tension suspended in the lot. Jordan's eyes followed the shifting patterns of reflected light in the puddles on the asphalt, watching the fractured neon glow ripple across each small wave, a visual mirror to the calm, controlled rhythm of his breathing. Officer Blake Thornton stood a few feet away, still observing, the subtle shifting of weight from one boot to the other, the only movement breaking the otherwise still tableau, a demonstration of habitual authority, methodical and deliberate, measured against the quiet, deliberate focus of Jordan within the van. The mist swirled lightly, curling around the tires, the hood, and the side mirrors, softening edges and blending shadows, adding a cinematic texture to the scene that made every detail more pronounced. The glint of light on damp metal, the slight sag of the motel awning, the weathered textures of peeling paint on the doors and window frames. Jordan's fingers brushed once more against the waterproof envelope, feeling the slight resistance of the paper, the reassuring weight that confirmed the preparation he had undertaken was intact and complete, a tangible connection to the certainty he carried despite the uncertainty of the moment. A crow alighted atop the motel roof, its feathers slick with rain, head cocked in silent observation, adding a faint rhythm of life to the still scene, while distant thunder rolled softly over the horizon, a low, resonant vibration that seemed to echo the tension between the two men without imposing urgency. The neon flickered again, casting elongated, fractured shadows that stretched across the puddles, the gravel, and the asphalt, creating a layered play of light and dark, emphasizing the depth and focus of the moment, highlighting the meticulous organization in Jordan's hands against the rigid presence of Thornton's stance. Jordan's breath came steady, deliberate, the cool, damp air filling his lungs and releasing in a controlled cadence, aligning with the rhythm of the light and the distant rumbles, creating a synchrony between environment and awareness, a subtle dance of perception and focus. The officer's eyes followed each movement, a slight tightening at the corners, betraying curiosity and measured reassessment, a silent acknowledgement of the unexpected clarity and competence displayed, his posture momentarily less rigid, the habitual aura of authority encountering the quiet assertion of preparation and intellect. The motel lot, framed by chain-link fencing and dim street lights, seemed to expand in the neon glow, each puddle a miniature mirror reflecting fragments of van, officer, and sky, the gentle distortions amplifying the sense of suspended anticipation. The ordinary lot transformed into a stage where every movement, every glance, and every reflected light became an integral part of the silent dialogue. Jordan shifted slightly, adjusting the angle of the envelope so the faint annotations caught the flickering light perfectly, ensuring the precision of every circle and underline was evident, a visual manifestation of preparation and truth in contrast to the authority present outside. The mist thickened slightly, coating the edges of the van and curling around Jordan's hoodie, the damp fabric clinging lightly to his arms, reminding him of the physicality of the night, grounding his awareness in the tangible, while his mind remained sharply attuned to every visual cue and reflective surface. The distant sound of tires on wet pavement punctuated the quiet, each soft splatter echoing faintly, layering a natural rhythm beneath the soft hum of the van and the irregular patter of residual rain on the roof, a subtle musicality that underscored the serene confidence Jordan maintained. Jordan's hands rested lightly on the envelope now, each fingertip aware of texture, weight, and orientation, reinforcing a sense of control and preparedness, a tactile rehearsal of the presentation he had planned, while Officer Thornton's subtle shifts of stance mirrored a mental engagement, the silent assessment of precision and awareness forming an unspoken bridge of understanding between authority and preparation. Lightning flashed distantly, illuminating the motel in stark white, casting ephemeral shadows and highlighting the textures of asphalt, puddles, and worn doors, a brief but vivid contrast that made the calm composure of Jordan even more pronounced, each detail a reinforcement of his presence, integrity, and readiness to maintain focus amidst the charged stillness. The van's interior reflected the muted colors of neon, mist, and shadow, each element interacting with the envelope, with Jordan's steady gaze and the disciplined posture of the officer, creating a layered, cinematic rhythm, a tableau of quiet anticipation, a precise alignment of environment, awareness, and the subtle, unspoken dynamics of control, observation, and meticulous preparation. Suddenly, the distant hum of rotor blades cut through the night air, a low, resonant vibration that caused the puddles on the asphalt to ripple subtly, distorting the neon reflections across the motel lot. Jordan Ellis's head tilted slightly, eyes tracking the subtle movement in the sky as the shadow of a helicopter passed over, its landing lights sweeping across the wet asphalt in rhythmic pulses, illuminating every crack, puddle, and glint of reflective paint with a dramatic clarity that seemed almost deliberate. The envelope in his hands remained still, fingers resting lightly on its edges as he absorbed the sudden change in the atmosphere, the quiet strength of preparation now intersecting with an unexpected manifestation of presence overhead. Officer Blake Thornton instinctively straightened, the sudden whirring of the blades drawing his gaze upward, a rare moment of hesitation breaking the habitual confidence etched into his posture. The rain had softened into a fine mist, droplets clinging to the edges of the van, sliding down windows in slow, deliberate streams that caught the strobe-like illumination from the helicopter, creating fractured patterns across the interior surfaces and on the envelope, highlighting annotations and precise markings with almost cinematic detail. Jordan's breath came steady and deliberate, each inhalation drawing in the cool, damp air, exhalations slow and controlled, a rhythm that mirrored the subtle, rolling vibrations from above, aligning him with the unexpected tempo introduced into the scene. The motel lot stretched quietly around them, the reflection of neon, puddles, and wet asphalt interlacing with the moving shadows cast by the helicopter, forming a dynamic, layered tableau where every detail seemed charged with significance, each droplet and glint reinforcing the intensity of presence and observation. Jordan allowed his eyes to follow the movement of the rotor blades, noticing the way light glinted off the metal surfaces, The precision of the sweep, the way the air moved in faint, rolling eddies that brushed the edges of the van, teasing at the curtains and puddles with gentle currents. Officer Thornton's gaze shifted repeatedly, once toward the envelope in Jordan's hands, then back up to the overhead presence, a subtle conflict of authority and uncertainty reflected in the tightening around his eyes and the barely perceptible shift in stance. The envelope's texture beneath Jordan's fingertips offered a grounding, tangible contrast to the ephemeral, shifting patterns of light above, reinforcing calm, focus, and a quiet command of awareness amidst the dramatic visual orchestration. The mist carried the faint smell of wet asphalt and distant pine from the roadside embankment, mingling with the interior scent of paper and damp fabric, creating a sensory landscape that was both immediate and grounding, anchoring thought and perception in the tangible even as the sky above introduced an expansive sense of scale and power. The rhythmic pulsing of the helicopter lights across the lot created elongated shadows that interacted with every puddle, surface, and edge, fracturing reflections into ephemeral patterns, the interplay of light and shadow amplifying the weight of the moment, the subtle crescendo of anticipation building as each reflection shifted imperceptibly with the movement above. Jordan's eyes narrowed slightly, tracking the interaction of light and shadow across the envelope, the van, and the asphalt, mentally rehearsing the sequence of presentation and engagement that had brought him here, each detail aligned to ensure clarity, precision, and composure. Officer Thornton shifted his weight once more, the boots scuffing faintly against the gravel, the subtle adjustment a mirror of internal calculation as he absorbed both the visual spectacle and the unwavering focus of Jordan within the van. The neon sign continued its intermittent flicker, casting sharp, colorful angles that intersected with the sweeping illumination from above, creating a dynamic interplay that seemed to pulse in sync with the soft, controlled movements of Jordan's hands and eyes, every gesture deliberate, every detail accounted for. A distant rolling thunder punctuated the soundscape, low and resonant, blending with the rhythmic chop of the rotor blades, a reminder of the vast scale beyond the immediate scene, the power and presence overhead subtly shifting the atmosphere, while Jordan maintained steady composure. The motel lot, the van, the envelope, and the officer now existed within a layered environment of light, reflection, mist, and observation, each element interacting in a complex, cinematic tableau, reinforcing the quiet revelation that preparation, focus, and composure could assert presence and command even in the shadow of sudden, unexpected display of power. The dynamics of authority subtly inverted as awareness and readiness took precedence over conventional hierarchy. The helicopter rotors gradually receded into the distance, leaving the motel lot bathed in the soft ambient glow of the flickering neon sign, the mist rising gently from puddles to mingle with the cool night air. Jordan Ellis exhaled, feeling the tension dissolve in subtle waves as the quiet strength of his composure remained intact, each measured breath reinforcing his calm and confidence. Officer Blake Thornton lowered his gaze toward the envelope, the weight of the meticulous preparation within undeniable, and for a long moment, neither man spoke, the silence filled only by the distant hum of the highway and the gentle drip of rainwater from the eaves above. The motel appeared suspended in time, shadows stretching across the gravel and asphalt, the reflections in puddles fracturing and reforming with each faint ripple, painting a shifting pattern that mirrored the subtle shift in authority between the two figures. Jordan's hands rested lightly on the envelope, fingertips brushing the precise edges, the tactile reassurance of organization and clarity. Grounding him, a quiet testament to focus and integrity amidst the tension of the night. Thornton's posture relaxed fractionally, shoulders lowering imperceptibly as he absorbed the careful presentation, his eyes scanning the annotations and notes with an unspoken acknowledgement that the situation was no longer a simple exercise of authority, but a recognition of competence, preparation, and presence. The air was cool and damp, carrying the faint scent of wet asphalt, faint traces of pine from nearby trees, and the subtle aroma of paper and ink from the envelope, grounding each breath, each heartbeat, each gesture in sensory awareness. The van's interior reflected fragments of neon and shadow, the misted windows transforming light into gentle gradients across the dashboard and envelope, emphasizing the precision of every annotation and the calm control Jordan maintained. Outside, the motel's parking lot remained still, the occasional distant vehicle passing unnoticed, the low, rolling hum blending with the intermittent flicker of the neon sign, creating a rhythm that underscored the quiet assertion of presence Jordan carried. He shifted slightly, allowing the envelope to catch a final glint of neon across the annotations, each line, circle, and underline now visible in stark contrast, a visual confirmation of diligence and forethought. Thornton's gaze lingered, catching the subtle interplay of light and shadow, the careful alignment of paper, the calm confidence in Jordan's posture, and in that silent observation, a recognition formed that authority alone did not dictate correctness or insight. The mist curled around tires, edges of the van, and the nearest puddles, softening the harsh geometry of asphalt and concrete into a more fluid, reflective space where small movements and subtle gestures carried amplified significance. Jordan's exhalation blended with the cool night air, deliberate and measured, his eyes sweeping the lot briefly to reaffirm awareness, to capture the environmental cues, to ground his presence within the ordinary scene now layered with extraordinary significance. The neon sign flickered one last time, casting fractured reflections across wet surfaces, puddles, and envelope alike, creating a visual rhythm that echoed the steady pulse of Jordan's composure, reinforcing the alignment of clarity, preparation, and quiet integrity. Thornton's eyes followed the subtle shimmer of the neon in the puddles and on the envelope, the faint ripples in water reflecting the meticulous organization, the calm decisiveness, and the steadfast focus Jordan had maintained throughout the encounter. The night stretched quietly around them, the mist, the reflections, and the residual soundscape of distant traffic, drips, and wind forming a serene tableau where authority and preparation met, where calm presence and deliberate attention outweighed assumption or hierarchy, and where the balance of recognition quietly shifted toward understanding and respect. Jordan let his gaze drift over the motel lot one final time, noting every puddle, every crack, every soft reflection of light, the environment now a witness to the quiet assertion of competence and integrity, a subtle, undeniable inversion of expectation that marked the culmination of focus, preparation, and measured presence in the still, misted night. Jordan Ellis slowly stepped out of the delivery van, feeling the residual dampness of his hoodie cling to his shoulders, the cool night air wrapping around him with a quiet insistence as the mist continued to rise from the puddles on the asphalt. The neon sign above the motel flickered intermittently, casting long, fractured reflections across the gravel and wet surfaces, each pulse of light emphasizing the contours of the lot, the subtle textures of worn concrete, and the soft glint of water on the hood of the van. Jordan's eyes traced the scattered reflections, absorbing every detail, the gentle curve of puddles, the jagged edges of cracks in the asphalt, the shifting patterns of neon across reflective surfaces, creating a living map of awareness that extended beyond the envelope he had meticulously prepared. Officer Blake Thornton remained still a few feet away, the subtle adjustment of his weight and the slight softening of his posture signaling an unspoken recognition, a pause in the habitual assertion of authority as he observed Jordan's calm presence. The mist thickened slightly, curling around tires, then edges, and puddles, softening the harsh geometry of the motel lot into a more fluid, reflective environment where light, shadow, and observation danced together in quiet interplay. Jordan's fingers brushed the edge of the envelope one last time, feeling the tactile reassurance of its organization, the precise folds and annotations a tangible reminder of preparation and integrity, an unspoken assertion of composure that contrasted with the habitual presence of authority nearby. The distant hum of the highway blended with the soft rustle of rain dripping from the motel eaves, a low, continuous rhythm that seemed to underscore the layered tension and eventual resolution of the encounter, a gentle accompaniment to the silent acknowledgement exchanged between awareness and authority. Jordan lifted his gaze toward the sky, where the fading glow of the Black Hawks lingered faintly on the horizon, their distant silhouettes casting a symbolic presence over the lot, emphasizing the reversal of expectation that had unfolded, the quiet power of preparation and calm determination asserting itself amidst circumstances that had initially suggested vulnerability. The neon reflections shimmered across his eyes and the envelope, highlighting the contrast between meticulous human effort and the dramatic sweep of external presence above, a visual metaphor for the subtle but undeniable assertion of competence and truth. Thornton's gaze followed the shifting reflections, the glinting puddles, and the illuminated envelope, a measured observation that carried weight, a tacit acknowledgement that the balance had shifted, that recognition, precision, and calm focus had prevailed over assumption and immediate authority. The motel remained suspended in mist, light, and reflection, each element interacting with the others to compose a silent, cinematic tableau, where every droplet, ripple, and shadow contributed to the final sense of quiet resolution, reinforcing the endurance of preparation and composure in contrast to initial power dynamics. Jordan's exhalation was slow and steady, releasing tension. With a controlled rhythm, his eyes taking in the motel lot one final time, each puddle, crack, and reflective surface recording the environment with the acuity of awareness sharpened by experience. The distant low hum of traffic, the faint drip of water from the eaves, and the soft scattering of neon across the wet asphalt created a sensory tapestry that grounded Jordan even as the environment remained dynamically alive with subtle shifts of light and shadow. He allowed himself a brief pause, absorbing the culmination of meticulous preparation, composure, and recognition, the quiet authority of presence now fully aligned with the surrounding scene, the mist, reflections, and residual light weaving together into a serene, final tableau of quiet triumph. The motel lot stretched before him, illuminated by flickering neon and softened by the rising mist, each element emphasizing the resolution of the night's tension, a visual and sensory affirmation of balance, awareness, and the subtle, undeniable power of integrity asserting itself in the still, reflective air of the humid, cool evening.